Hi everyone, it's Talia from Zart Art, and today we're going to be creating a Yayoi Kusama inspired oil pastel print. Here's a little bit of an example of what we'll be creating today. So we've got our oil pastel backing here, and we've got our print on the other side. So this is a monoprinting process where we're going to use the oil pastel to create a print of the positive space on the other side of a piece of paper. Our artwork today is inspired by Yayoi Kusama, who is a Japanese contemporary artist. She's well known for her use of color and shape, and you can see similarities between her work and pop art artwork as well. So we'll be drawing from her use of patterns and her use of color in this print. So the first part of this process is to get an oil pastel base down on cartridge paper. So cartridge paper, this is a 130 GSM cartridge. You don't need anything that's too thick, and you can work at whatever scale you like. But this can be a bit of a longer process because you do need to create a thick base of oil pastel, and that can take a little while to get that base onto the paper. So I think A5 is a good size to work at. A4, it will take you a little while, but definitely doable. So on our A4 piece of paper, which we have folded in half, we are going to use oil pastels to create that base. Now for this part of the process, you can do abstract patterns, you can do just different colors blending together, or you can focus on some of Kusama's shapes and patterns that she uses in her artwork, and then you can have potentially two artworks in the one process. So you could cut this paper in half and have this as a piece that you display, and then the print as a piece that you display as well. So I'm going to have a look at some of her abstracted shapes, draw them onto my piece of paper, and make sure I apply my oil pastel quite thick. I'm also going to be using a range of contrasting colors, which are really bold and will work really nicely in this kind of print. So using colors like maybe black, red, nice purple in there. I think it's nice to use a range of colors instead of just sticking to a few. So you might want to pick out which colors that you want to incorporate in your work and then go from there. You can use as many colors as you like, and you might want to draw inspiration from one of Kusama's works as a source for which colors you're using. So picking your colors and then thinking about what kind of shapes. So Kusama uses a lot of abstract shapes, a lot of organic shapes as well. So I'm going to incorporate those into my drawing. Okay, so I've got my basic shapes on my page, and now we need to make sure that we're getting a nice thick base of oil pastel. We don't want to see any white on our page, because when we're doing our print, we need to make sure that we've got solid color, or that print will not transfer very well. And you'll be able to tell if you haven't colored in all of the sections of your paper nicely, because some areas where you press with your pencil later on, they won't transfer over to the other side of your page. So going over our shapes with some good pressure in your oil pastel. This is why it's good to work at a smaller scale, because this can take a while if you're working on an A4 page. Then your hand might be a bit sore after going a full hour of coloring, whereas A5 is a good size to keep things running pretty quickly. Okay, so now I've filled my whole page with oil pastel, so you can go back in and work with different colors just to make sure that there's no white parts on your page. Now the next step is to flip over the page, so the print is going to come out onto the page that is touching the oil pastel. And then we're going to use a plain grey lead pencil. Usually a blunt pencil works quite well for this process, and we're going to draw our design onto the paper, and that will create the print. So if you can see here, we've drawn our designs or our patterns on this side of the paper, which has pressed onto the oil pastel underneath and transferred onto the next page. So you might want to draw out a draft of what you want to put on your page to create a print, because once you've drawn a line, you can't erase it. That will be what the print is on your other page. So looking at Kusama's work, I'm going to draw some of the mushrooms that she uses in many of her paintings and incorporating some of those lines and patterns and dots, which are very apparent in lots of her work. So have a think about what kind of print you want to create, maybe do a draft, and then you can transfer that draft over to your page. So with your pencil, a blunt pencil is great because you can push hard onto your page, so you don't need to put a lot of force into it, but you do want to make sure that you are pressing into it so you do get a solid line and a solid print from your oil pastel. So let's have a little bit of a look. As you can see, that's transferred really nicely. It's a solid line. You can see the different colors, so it's always nice to incorporate a few colors so that you can see the contrast between each of the colors on your print. Now I'm going to complete my full design. Okay, so as you can see, our print has transferred. I'm going to add a little bit more pattern, especially in the background. So I'm going to create some lines. I think it's good to fill up your whole page with patterns and drawings because you have colored in your whole piece of paper with oil pastel. I think you want to make the most of what you've got there. So in my background, I'm going to add some more lines to fill up my page. Okay, so now we've got our finished print, so you can leave it as is, or if you want some of your lines or shapes to be more apparent, what you can do is go back over your piece and just make them a little bit more bold. So for these mushrooms, I feel like they might be disappearing a little bit in those background lines that we've just added. So all I will do is go over those lines to make them thicker, just the outside lines of that mushroom, and then it should be able to come out a little bit more in the print and create a bit of emphasis in those shapes. So that's always good to think about when you're creating your design or your print. Think about which areas you want to emphasize, what do you want to make bold. You can use thin lines, thick lines. Just think about how they translate over to your print. So I'm just going to go over the rest of these shapes and we'll have a look at how that may have changed our print. Okay, so now I've finished going over those lines to make them a bit thicker so you can see them a little bit better in my finished print. So what you can do is display your artwork like this, or you can cut on the line and then you can have two separate artworks that you can mount and display separately or together. But it's great to have some options for your display and think about what makes a good display, what you're trying to represent in your work, and how it might read to an audience. So here we have our two artworks that you can mount, you can frame, display them in different ways, but that is our oil pastel print, a great way to look at color, shape, and explore Kusama's artworks. But I hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to seeing you next time.